very warm welcome to latest case analysis series by Law Seeker. For today's discussion, we have taken up a decision, or rather a landmark decision, which was delivered by the Honorable High Court of Delhi on 27th of November 2020. The name of the case is Karan versus State NCT of Delhi. It is a three-judge bench decision, and the bench consisted of Honorable Justice J.R. Midda, Justice Rajneesh Bhatnagar, and Justice Brijesh Sethi. Now let's proceed and understand the issue of law. So the court was to decide whether awarding compensation under Article 357 under Section 357 subsection 3 of the CRPC is mandatory in nature. So before we proceed, let's have a look at Section 357 subsection 3 of the CRPC. So Section 357 it provides for order to pay compensation, and subsection 3 of this particular section it provides that when a court imposes a sentence of which fine does not form a part, then the court may, when passing judgment, order the accused person to pay by way of compensation such amount as may be specified to the person who has suffered any loss or injury by reason of the act of the accused for which he is sentenced. So essentially, subsection 3 provides that whenever a court is imposing a sentence of which fine does not form a part, so then how does the court ensure that victim is compensated? So in such a scenario, the court may order the accused person to pay a specified sum as compensation for the injuries or loss or harm which is inflicted to the victim or his or her family. So now let's proceed and understand the brief facts of the matter. So in the year 2017, the appellant was a juvenile in conflict with law. He stabbed the victim, and the victim, pursuant to such an act of stabbing, suffered fatal injuries. And on 6th of March 2020, the appellant, as a result of such an act of stabbing, he was convicted by learned additional sessions judge under section 302 read with section 34 of the IPC, and the judgment was reserved in March, and this judgment it was reserved while the judge was being posted at Kadkaduma courts in Delhi. Now, on 13th of March 2020, the additional sessions judge transferred from Kadkaduma courts to Rohini courts. So the judge was transferred from Kadkaduma courts to Rohini courts, and after such a transfer on 9th of June 2020, the impugned judgment was pronounced. So the judgment was reserved on in the month of March, and thereafter in the same month, that is in the month of March, but after the judgment was reserved, the judge was transferred from the Karkaduma courts to Rohini courts, and thereafter the judgment was pronounced. Now, by impugned judgment, we mean a judgment which is under challenged. So, under challenge. So, the impugned judgment it was challenged by the appellant was Karan on dual grounds. The first being that after the judge was transferred, he lacked jurisdiction with respect to Kadkaduma court matters, and second being that note 2 which was attached to the transfer order, and this note it empowered judges to pronounce judgments and orders in reserved matters within a period of 2 or 3 weeks. So such a note which was attached to the transfer order, it was invalid. So these were the two grounds on the basis of which this particular judgment it was challenged. The first being that the judge did not have the jurisdiction to pronounce the judgment, and second that the judge who drew the power from note 2 which was attached to the transfer order, this note it was itself invalid. Now in July 2020, the appeal which was filed an appeal was filed before the division bench of the High Court impugning this judgment, and this appeal it was considered by the division bench, and while considering the appeal and the nature of contentions raised, the division bench issued notice on administrative side of the High Court, and thereafter an appointment of an amicus curiae was done. The amicus curiae submitted in August 2020 that in the case of Gokaraju Rangaraju versus State of Andhra Pradesh, the Honorable Apex Court had held three facets or three factors. The first being that judgment by a sessions judge is valid and legal even if the appointment of the judge is held to be invalid. And second, that the applicability of de facto doctrine was attracted, and it was stated that de facto doctrine, it was well established and it is no stranger to Constitution and Parliament of India. And third being that Article 233 capital A of the Indian Constitution, it protects judgments of judges notwithstanding that their appointment, their posting, promotion and transfer, it was not valid. So essentially, citing this particular decision of the Honorable Apex Court, it was stated that the court had already held, the Supreme Court has held that whenever a judgment or decision of a judge or session judge is in question, on the fact that the appointment of such a judge is invalid, then the judgment or decision will be held to be valid and legal, and then the applicability of doctrine of de facto doctrine, it was also ascertained. And then it was also stated that in the Constitution itself we have provisions which state that notwithstanding the fact that the appointment or transfer or promotion of a particular judicial officer is held to be not valid, so notwithstanding that fact the judgments are protected. So now, before we proceed, let's have a look at de facto doctrine. Essentially, de facto doctrine, it means or it postulates the principle that an act which is done by an officer who is holding a public office or a judicial office, so any act which is done by such a person in the capacity of such an office, it will be regarded as being valid in law in certain circumstances, even if the appointment of such an officer is held to be invalid. Now, on 10th August 2020, matter was referred to a larger bench because the division bench thought that important questions of criminal justice system were involved in this particular matter, and hence this matter should be referred to a larger bench. So now let's proceed and understand the reasoning and decision of the court. So the court at the very first instance looked at the provisions in Constitution of India and also under the CRPC and the Delhi High Court rules, which provided for power of superintendence of the High Court. So the first being the power of superintendence as provided under the Constitution of India. The court stated that under Article 227 of the Indian Constitution, high courts are empowered with superintendence over all courts and tribunals throughout its territory, and the High Court can transfer a case by exercising its administrative powers or judicial powers. And second being Article 235, high courts are empowered to post or promote judicial officers. Now, looking at the power of superintendence as provided for under this Code of Criminal Procedure, the court held that high courts are vested with plenary powers in the CRPC with respect to superintendence over subordinate courts, including appointment, posting, promotion, and transfer of judges. And certain sections or provisions of the CRPC were highlighted by the court. Those were Section 194, Section 407, Section 483, Section 482, and Section 483, which we've already done here. So, Section 483. Along with these provisions of the CRPC, Rule 3 of Part B of Chapter 26 of the Delhi High Court rules were also referred to by the court. Now, the third segment that we'll be discussing was that of victimology. So, the court, while doing, while referring this particular segment in the judgment, reflected on the plight of the victims and their families, and while doing so, the court observed that victims, and rightly so, they're the worst sufferers, and unfortunately, they're often the forgotten entity in a particular case in the entire criminal justice delivery system of our country. And not only victims, even their families' lives are ruined, and their lives are ruined because they've lost lives of a loved ones. But apart from that, they also suffer a loss of reputation, humiliation, agony, and constant pain. And thereafter, the court rightly held that human life cannot be restored, but effect of offense, it can be considered and monetary compensation can be given so that it provides some solace to the family members of the victim and the victim himself or herself if the victim has not become a deceased person. And the fourth point being that complete justice is done only when the victim is compensated. Thereafter, the court went on to discuss in detail the provisions of Section 357 and 357 capital A of the CRPC. So the court stated that Section 357 high courts are empowered to award compensation in terms of the section to victims who are suffered by the act of the accused person, and it gives a constructive approach to crimes. And this particular section, this power of the High Court to grant compensation to the victim, it is not ancillary, but it is in addition to other sentences. And this is a very important finding, which is that the word may, which is used in section 357, subsection 3, which we already discussed, that the court may, if it deems it necessary or fit, to award compensation in matters wherein the sentence, where when fine does not itself form a part of a sentence. So, the court in such scenario may grant compensation to the victim through the accused. So, the use of this word may, the Delhi High Court in this particular matter held that it means shall. Hence, the provisions of section 357, subsection 3, they are mandatory in nature. Further, the court held that mere punishment it is not enough, and civil action for damages it is a long drawn and a cumbersome judicial process. Monetary compensation for redressal by court finding, monetary compensation for redressal by a court which is finding infringement of an indefeasible right to life of a citizen, it is useful, and not only useful, it is in fact the need of the hour. And then the court made a reference to the case of Ankush Shivaji, wherein the Supreme Court directed that courts shall consider Section 357 CRPC in every criminal case, and in case it does not consider this particular section in a criminal case, then reasons, legit reasons, have to be furnished in uh, in such a case by the courts. And then the court dwelled on how do we compute the quantum of compensation which is to be awarded. So for this, the court stated that to be determined, this particular the quantum of compensation, it is to be determined on the basis of gravity of the offense, the severity of the mental and physical harm or injury inflicted on the victim, the damage or the loss suffered by the victim or victims, and also the capacity of the accused to pay. And then, while doing so, the court stated the present occupation and income of the accused, it is to be considered. And once this is considered, then monthly compensation out of the income of the accused can also be directed to be paid. And this is an important decision or important facet of this particular decision, which is that accused, the court held, after his conviction, is required mandatorily to file an affidavit disclosing his income and assets in the format which is prescribed by the court itself. And sixth aspect being the victim impact report, which is to be prepared by the Delhi State Legal Services Authority in every criminal case after conviction, and it is to be formed in the format which is formulated by the Delhi High Court in this particular case itself. And the purpose of the victim impact report, it is to disclose the impact of the crime on victim. And thereafter, the court stated or laid down provisions governing summary inquiry. So the court stated that a summary inquiry is to be conducted by the State Legal Services Authority after receipt of documents from trial court. And what is the purpose of such a summary inquiry? It is needed to ascertain the impact of the crime on the victim and the expenses which is incurred on prosecution, and also the paying capacity of the accused. So these are the threefold benefits or the purpose, reasons why a summary inquiry is to be conducted. And this is an important aspect which we need to understand, which will tell us the practical aspects of it. So how is this entire arrangement going to work? The summary inquiry, the victim impact report, and also the affidavit which is filed by the accused. So, this is how it is going to work. The procedure. So, after conviction, the trial court shall direct the accused person to file affidavit of his asset and income within 10 days. So, after his conviction, the accused is required to file affidavit of his assets and income within 10 days, and thereafter the state is required to disclose the expenses which are incurred on prosecution within a period of 30 days. The trial court shall then send the judgment of the copy of the judgment and also the affidavit of the accused, stating the income and assets that the accused person owns, to the Delhi State Legal Services Authority. So now the documents, that is the judgment copy and also the affidavit of the accused, it is with the DSLSA. So the Delhi State Legal Services Authority, after getting hold of the judgment copy and the affidavit, it will conduct a summary inquiry to ascertain the impact of the crime on the victim and the expense which is incurred on the prosecution and also the paying capacity of the accused. And after having done so, it is required to prepare a victim impact report disclosing the impact of the crime on the victim within a period of 30 days. Now, the court also stated that if necessary assistance is required to be taken from the police or any other law enforcement agency, then the DSLSA can do so. And then the trial court, after having received the victim impact report from the Delhi State Legal Services Authority, it is going to consider this report. And after hearing the parties, including the victim, it shall award compensation and it shall direct the accused person to deposit the compensation to DSLSA. And the Delhi State Legal Services Authority shall then disburse the amount to victims according to their scheme. Now, what if there is a scenario wherein the compensation which is computed, it is either not payable by the accused or it is inadequate? So, what is to be done in such scenario? So, the court answered this particular question or eventuality in the following manner, that the Delhi State Legal Services Authority, it is to award compensation from Victim Compensation Fund, which is managed under the Delhi Victims Compensation Scheme of the year 2018. So the funds which is either inadequate or which is not payable by the accused due to not having sufficient means, so then the victim compensation scheme of 2018 will serve as the reserve for getting compensation. Now, then the court addressed the question of pending appeals and revisions. So, while doing so, the court stated that in pending appeals and revisions against order on sentence in which section 357 of the CRPC was not complied with. So, what do we do in these cases? Because it is already at the stage of appeal or revision. So, the court stated that the public prosecutor shall file applications seeking court direction to accuse to file income affidavit, and directions to Delhi State Legal Services Authority shall be issued to conduct a summary inquiry. And thereafter, the court stated that statement to Registrar General on monthly statement should be given, and the statement it should be containing the following: A being list of cases which are decided each month, the date of the conviction, whether income affidavit was filed or not, whether summary inquiry is conducted, whether compensation amount is awarded or not, and mandatory summary inquiry and victim impact report in formats which are prescribed by the court. They were suggested by the court to be incorporated in statutes or rules. And then eventually coming to the ground on which this particular appeal in the very first place came before the division bench, which is that the note 2 which is attached to the transfer order, it is invalid and the judge did not have the jurisdiction. So with respect to this aspect, the court held that the judge indeed had the jurisdiction, and the note 2 which is attached to the transfer order, it was also legal and valid. And the judgment of learned sessions additional sessions judge, it was valid, and it was the judge was duly empowered to pronounce such a judgment. And also with respect to the delay in pronouncing the judgment, because there was a time period which was given, which was of 2 or 3 weeks, the court condoned such a delay as being mere irregularity, and the impugned judgment the court held was protected under sections 462 and section 465 of the CRPC, and it was also protected by virtue of the de facto doctrine. So that's all we have for this case analysis. At the end of it, you may find a list of abbreviations which we've used in the note, and it is a landmark decision which will be a relief, a huge relief for the victims. As the court rightly stated, the victims are the worst sufferers, and often the unfortunate part is they are the forgotten aspects or entities in the criminal justice delivery system of our country, and it is a huge respite for the victims. Thank you for being with us.